Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehakol nihiyeh b'dvarai.
Amen.
Oh, amazing. Okay, I apologize for starting a few minutes late, which is particularly meaningful today because we really cannot waste a minute today because we have a tremendous amount to get to. And in that vein, I ask really if we could try to hold comments for after the shiur this morning, just because we really want to try to make it to the end. Otherwise, we're it's a big break and then have to sort of come back into it. I'd much rather start from Torah Lamed Vav when we get back. So let's just, if I could ask, let's try as much as we can to hold off. Don't forget the questions, remember them, and then ask me afterwards if you can. Today's shiur is sponsored by Zev Klein, Illuminations, his parents, Rebbe Simcha, and Yaakov ben Yeshayahu, the Neshama Shel Aliyah. Also sponsored anonymously zechus Shidduchim for Klal Yisrael singles. Also dedicated as a zechus for refuah sheleimah for Chaim Yehoshua ben Chaya Miriam should have a speedy and complete refuah be'ezras Hashem. Amen. Okay, so let's continue be'ezras Hashem. Like I said, really a tremendous amount to get to, and it's not like even if we get to the end, we'll have done it properly. I hate to say it's we are going to speed through this. Which is a bit unfortunate, but we'll always have to make a mental note and come back to Torah Lamed Hey. But the real truth is that we've not done any of the Torahs really properly, because every Torah you could sit for years on, so it's not any more or less. But it really is very dense, it's packed, it's deep, and maybe Adarabah, take the next 2 weeks, which is a break, and try yourself to go back over it a little bit more slowly and carefully. But be that as it may, we're going to do what is incumbent upon us, to jump back in and to try to get through the rest of Torah Lamed Hey today with a minimal introduction about Zarka, about tshuva and returning to the inyan of pure chachma, which we learned about, and staying away from chachmas kitzoniyos. And then to increase our chachma in such a way where periodically we're stopping to refresh our chachma. We spent a lot of time on that yesterday. Shena, we spoke about sleep. We spoke about sleep physically. We spoke about Shabbos, klape, the 6 days of the week. We spoke about learning pshat, klape, learning sod. We spoke about doing business, klape, learning bichlal, right, or avodas Hashem. And all of those were different forms of sleep, which is to return to the world of Malchus, and in that place to rest. And that's neichel hamoichin, even though it's more active from the standpoint of the klei ha'maisa, because we're active right in that space, and we're building and creating and doing business and learning shakla v'tarya, which is itself a kind of business, mekach u'memchar, giving and taking, right, back and forth and negotiating, so to speak. But ultimately, the moichin, right, that place that's really detached from this world, that wants to soar and travel in the olam hasayayin, is at rest, and we move to the spectrum, to the side of doing and away from being, and that's an aspect of rest in relation to the mind that is otherwise traveling at the Yam HaChachma with no docking point to be able to rest for maintenance. That was basically what we spoke about yesterday. Then at the very end of yesterday's shiur, the beginning of Isaiah, we started to say that when a person is in the time of Shena, which is the aspect of Mekach u'Memkar, which is the aspect I explained yesterday of going out of the Midbar and into Eretz Yisrael, which is a place of Avodah, there's a danger there. Because when you come out of the place of Moichin, which on the one hand is giving your mind, right, that part of your mind, the Chachma part of your mind, let's say, a rest, right, from just being mind blown and totally in rapture, let's say, of the experience of seeing all the connections between everything and all the depth and the meaning. It could get a bit much because it's Ad Ein Sof, it's Mamish Ad Ein Sof. So you have to return to the Olam HaMaisa. What's the danger? The danger is that over there's a very strong egoic impulse, and over there in that place there's the fear of koich ha'otzim yadi, right, where a person falls into that experience of, oh, I'm the one doing it, right, I'm the one who's engaged in that aspect of doing. And that's the aspect of, like I said, coming out of the midbar, where it's clear that our sustenance, our parnas, is coming straight from Hashem. And the Meraglim, in some sense, on some layer, right, didn't want to move into the next phase of Jewish history where we actually have to take active responsibility, right, and would much rather sit in a place where we're being supported directly from Hashem. And Hashem didn't want that, manifestly. Hashem sent us into the land and said, work the land. It's not going to happen on its own, right? And all of a sudden, there's halachas, and shmita, and yovel, right? And all the halachas that become relevant, Meiser, Truma, truma samaisers as a result of being involved in working the land, right? And that's the Indian of the danger, right? That's possible as a result of moving into that place. So what's the healing? So let's jump back inside. We're in the middle of Isaiah. Says the Heilige Rebbe, Vitzarech, yeah, you see where it says Vitzarech lahamshich, a little bit beyond above the bottom paragraph there. Vitzarech lahamshich bechinas chashmal me'olam habina. So in order to protect this aspect of Malchus, we need to draw down what's called chashmal from olam habina. Right, chashmal comes from the vision of Yecheskel, who sees the shalosh klibus atmeis legamri, which we've spoken about, which is the anan gadol and the eish mislakachas and the ruach sa'ara. Right, those are the three klibus that he sees. Then he sees inside of it is ke'ein. Is ke'ein chashmal v'noigala misaviv, right? And there's a glow around it. And these represent and hint to kedusha. And chashmal particularly is associated with the world of bina. Chashmal is gematria malbush, and that's the aspect in which bina hovers over, right, to protect, like a mother hovers over its young. Ki ima mesacheches al bina, right? Like a mother is like a mother bird, right? Is shielding with her wings her youth. And that's the aspect of Bina as a unifying category. We called Ima the Bina the Aim Habanim. All the six spheres emerge from Bina. In that sense, Bina is the unified womb from which all the particular energies emerge. Right? Ima is the feminine principle. This is the Aim Habanim. The mother bird, right? Shalach to Shalach is Aim. It has to do with Shaluch HaKan. I think we learned about that, and we mentioned that in the past. Right? And in that sense, Bina is a unifying category. It is encompassing, right? And that's the energy of chashmal, meaning even within the realm of multiplicity and disparity and mekach memkar, which is manifestly exile energy, because Rebbe Nachman already told us previously that when Mashiach comes, there will be no business anymore, because business implies a conflict in ratzon where I want to sell this thing and you want to buy this thing, right? And that's oppositional energy. When Mashiach comes, there will be no more mekach memkar. Right? All there will be that unified energy where everybody will literally be one, and everybody will be okay with what they have, and nobody will need to give or take, because everybody will just be totally satisfied, on every level and in every way. So Bina is the protective element when a person's in that realm of galus, where a person even so is able to connect to an element of the value, let's say, that is beyond that, right? Is sheltering that with the light of oneness, with the light of unity. That's called the malbush, right? That garment, that's gematria chashmal. That's called sviv emuna. And then he says va'azai, which we just spoke out, ima misakeches al bina. In the lashon of the Zohar Kadosh, the mother shields her young, misakeches, like a sukkah, right? Schach, right? Covers over the children. Shelo yinku mimena, that nothing is able to be yoinik from it. In other words, that the chitzonim, which are forces that seize on multiplicity and disparity, shouldn't go ahead and drag this person's experience of mekach or memkar down into the dump, right, where they disconnect themselves from kedusha, and in their own lives cause the pegam of shvir sakelim, which we spoke about in the previous Torah, where each person says ana emlech, and they disassociate from the rest of reality, thereby causing it to explode ultimately, right? Meaning into many shards, right? And to erase the sense of unity. That's ima misakeches albana sha'ali'ah. Okay, shalo yin can be mad. He aim im labina tikra. The pasuk of Mishlei says, if you shall call out to bina, right? But the Zohar Kadosh Darshans aim labikra labina tikra, right? So bina is ima. Bina is associated with a mother. Ubina is liba. We know that bina is associated with the heart. Okay, so how do I draw Bina down into my heart, into my life, right? When I need an energy that's going to protect me when I go into the place of Shena, says the Rebbe, well, if Bina is Lev, so then what can we do in our heart that's going to maintain our integrity when we're involved in Mekach HaMemkar? When a person brings emes into their heart. In other words, a person's involved in Mekach HaMemkar, but emes remains the strongest principle. Right? Like I say, honesty is the best policy. When you talk about policies and you talk about business and you talk about, if a person has emes as their best policy, where there's no value in abrogating this particular, or I don't know if abrogating is the right word, that's what I'm looking for, denying acting against this particular principle of MS for any purpose, meaning it doesn't matter how much profit they stand to gain, whatever they stand to gain monetarily, they will lose much more morally, right? If they're going to go and need to lie or cheat in order to get the money, it's not a cheshbon for them, because the most important thing in their life is values, not money, right? And so to a person like that, then they're protected by the energy of Bina. Because then they're protected and connected to the energy of MS, v'doiver MS bil-vavai, Bina liba, and in that sense they remain anchored. They remain anchored because they don't get lost in the egoic experience of gain, because their allegiance is to something beyond themselves, right? And even though their self might lose out, because they're being so honest, like we're about to see an example of Reb Safra in the Gemara, they might lose out financially, but it doesn't matter because they maintain an ever-constant link to a realm that's beyond themselves. That's a realm that's objective, a realm that's misakeches, right? A realm of values, or really one fundamental value, which is going to win every time, because even though I might stand to gain, and somebody with $1 billion is going to come to me and offer me financial security forever and ever, if I live in a way that's not aligned with what I'm really all about, I will say no 100 million % of the time. Why? Because a person's connected to why they're on this planet in the first place. And money is only a thing that's necessary for this world, right? And MS is a thing that's necessary, l'netzach netzachim. So it's not, and that's what the Gemara says is exactly what happened with Reb Safra, famous story. Says the Heilige Rebbe, let's just read it a little bit further. Oh, we read it already. I'm sorry. Did I skip a line? Yeah. That's what it is. Yeah, I'm sorry. I skipped a line. So go back. Right, we said Yerushalayim is amongst the klipas, the other forces, and we need protection. Yeah, I skipped this. Could go into Reb Safra. That's the story where Reb Safra was davening and somebody came to him and offered him a business deal, didn't realize, and he thought he was staying silent, so he thought he didn't agree to this price. He started raising the price. Reb Safra is still davening. He goes and he raises the price again because he really wants what Reb Safra is selling. Finally, Reb Safra stops, he finishes davening, and he says, go back to the first price, because even though now you're offering a higher price, I really was willing to sell it to you then. That's an MS. What do you mean? That's crazy. He's willing to pay you more, take more. And the answer is no. Because again, whatever I gain financially for me personally, for my goof, I lose out much. It's not worth it for me. It's not worth it, because MS is the most important thing. My ethics, my morals, my values is more important than finances. That's the most important thing. Okay, so now Ugumekayim v'doiver emos bolvavai. That's where we started today. Ze'abachin anasa chashmal. Oh no, this is where we're up to. Okay, I'm getting confused. This is okay. This is exactly where we're up to. Yes. Then, when Kigoyin Reb Safra, Umekayim, we are Mekayim v'doiver emes bilavava. We bring emes into our heart. Ze'abachin anasa chashmal. This creates chashmal, hainu malbush, which is gematria malbush, sviv ha'amuna, and it protects our experience of the world of amuna, which is mekach u'memkar. V'azai ima misakeches al benaha, sheleimah mimena. Then Bina is protecting the other lower forces, so that nothing should be yinik from it. V'hi imla bina tikra u'bina liba. V'zeh shemekayim v'davar emes polvavai azai ima misacheches al bana. Like we said, ima bina is going to be misacheches al bana shalev oiseh chashmal. The heart is filled with this light of chashmal, hainu malbush, sviv ha'emuna shaleimah mimena chitzayim. And then the chitzayim are not able to attack, right? And just a point on Chashmal, Chazal, I mean, there are a number of Chazals on what Chashmal is, Chai is Eish Memalodos, but one of the understandings of Chashmal is the speaking silence, right? Chashmal is a conjugation of two oppositional words. Chash is silence, Mal is words, is speech, right? Mila is a word. And so here, we're talking, again, just very deeply, is that Malchus is the world of words, right? Malchus pet, Tarshbat Pekarin Allah. We've been speaking so much about entering the world of differentiation, the will of HaKadosh Baruch Hu splintered into all the different energy packets that are the letters of the Aleph Beis, with which HaKadosh Baruch Hu created heaven and earth, right? We speak so much about that. That's the realm of Malchus, where a person moves into a world of self, orientation, where I have my own unique boundaries, just like all the letters are mukav gvil, and they have their own unique form and border. No letter, right, is masik gvul, is comparable to any of the others, and each one communicates a very particular energy, which is represented in a very particular sound and form and shape and so on. Silence is the world of Binah. We spoke about previously Rachel and Leah. Right, Rachel is the aspect of the Alma Galia. That's the world of revelation. Leah is the silent one. Leah cries silently. Leah is the world of Binah. It's silent. It's called the Alma Kasya. It's hidden. It's not Isgalia. Chashmal means that I am involved in the world of Mal. I'm living in the world of Milim. I'm living in the world of differentiation. And Mekach Memkar, where a person is buying and someone else is selling, and someone's selling and someone else is buying. And there's oppositional forces in Olam Hazeh, and at the same time, Chash. At the same time, I'm connected to the world of silence. In other words, I'm connected to values that go beyond, right, this particular interaction, right, this particular, what's the word? Transaction, thank you, right? This particular transaction. That's mal, and I'm chash, mal, right? That's drawing the chash into the mal, and that's associated with Binah, that's associated with the world of Leah, that's associated with the mother, that's covering over and protecting the Malchus. This is what Chazal say the Gemara Baba Basa, who writes a person who wants to be involved in Dinei Mamanis, he shamish as Shimon Ben Nanas, should go ahead and learn from Shimon Ben Nanas, should go and service Shimon Ben Nanas, who was a big tzaddik, whose whole thing was Dinei Mamanis. He was an expert in it. You want to know how to learn Dinei Mamanis, go watch, and that's what it means al pi pshat. Watch the transactions of Shimon Ben Nanas, who was an expert in Dinei Mamanis. Says the Rebbe al pi soid. Okay, that's beautiful. Al pi pshat. What does it mean al pi soid? Hainu, in other words, a person wants to go and be oisik in Dinei Mamanis, meaning they want to take a rest and they want to be anchored in this worldliness to protect themselves and to supercharge their ability to travel in the world of Pnimius. Which is called darkness, like we learned, right? And it's called emuna, like all the psukim we learned earlier. As I tzarech, like we just learned, you need to draw chashmal into it. You need to be anchored to values that go beyond your personal transactions. You need to be connected to the world of silence, even when you're interacting in the world, mamish interacting, right, which connotes two elements that are interacting in the world of differentiation. You need to draw chashmal from the leiv, v'dover emes b'levavai, right? V'dover emes b'levavai. V'chashmal hazeh hu malbish as R katan, and then that chashmal, right, which is the aspect of Bina, is going to be malbish, is going to surround and protect and enclothe and engarb the Ohr HaKatan, which is a reference to Malchus, the Levana. Hainu es ha'emuna, which is emuna, bebechinas ima misakeches al beno, like we just learned, like the mother is shielding her young, right, and is spreading her wings over them to protect them. So says the Rebbe, yeah, that's what Yishamish Esh Shimon Ben Nanas is hinting to. You know what Shimon Ben Nanas is? Ha'roitzeh, a person who wants lasik b'maso matan needs to be Yishamish Shimon Ben Nanas. So what's this remez? Says the Rebbe, Shimon is shmiya, listening. Ki shmiya talya beliba, because the Gemara tells us that listening is tali on the heart. To really hear something isn't with your ears, right? That's one thing. But even like colloquially, people say like, oh, I hear you. That doesn't mean I hear you. Everybody hears each other. It means I deeply understand. Meaning I bring it into my leiv. Shmiya talya beliba. Ki chashmal leiv, if you put the word chashmal together with leiv, is gematria shema, right? Because it's associated with really listening, with really hearing, right? And again, this Reb Safra had a proposition that was offered to him, right? Most people would just hear them, cha-ching, just sort of see the dollar signs in front of their eye. Reb Safra is listening more deeply and saying, okay, well, yeah, that's what I'll gain, but what will I lose? That's the point. This is what I'll gain, but my whole life is not about my bank account. So what will I lose if I intake this money? I'm losing something fundamental. That's chashmal leiv, shmiya, the ability to really listen deeper and to be connected to the truth, right? And not just look at things on the surface. That's shmiya talya beliba. That's the aspect of Shimon. Chashmal leiv, gematria shema, kamei shekasav, v'nasat ala avdecha leiv. Shemea. Right again, Shmiya is Talia the leiv. What's Ben Nanas? Says the Rebbe, B'chinas Hamuna, B'chinas Ben. Emuna, which is Malchus, is the Bechina of Ben, because we know that there are 4 expansions of the Shem Yud Kei Vav Kei, and they're all associated with the different Olamais. Atzilas, Bria, Yetzirah, Asiyah. This is the Shem Av, Sag, Ma, and Ban, right? Which are the gematrias of the different ways of expanding Yud Kei Vav Kei, right? Where we say the 3 different ways of saying the letter Hey is Hey Yud, or Hey Aleph, or Hey Hey, right? Etc. Etc. The Vav could be Vav Aleph Vav, it could be Vav Yud Vav. Okay, and when you bring all of those options together, they equal the 4 different gematrias: 72, 63, 52, and 45, and then 52. Av, Sag, Ma, and Ban. And the final one, connected to the Olam Asiyah, is Ban, right? Is 52, which is connected to the sphere of Malchus, right? Which is associated with the world of Asiyah. And therefore, Ban, is the way that you pronounce it when you speak about it in that way, is associated with Malchus, ubechinas and Nanas. Apparently Nanas means small. Hainu hama Ohr HaKatan. This is a reference to the smaller light. And I wasn't able in Mefarshim to find why Nanas means small, but that's what they all say. I don't know why, but Nanas is small. Okay. So now let's continue Be'ezus Hashem. Alright, so that's the remez. Alright, so Laza B'dinei Mammon is to go into that world of Shein and Mekach and Memkar, gotta be protected. How are you going to be protected? Shimon Ben Nanas, right? To draw down Shimon, which is the energy of hearing, which is the energy of Chashmal Lev, Shmiya, Ben Nanas, right? Down into the world of Malchus, and thereby to protect our experience in the world of differentiation. Says the Rebbe when a person is involved in this world, a maso matan be'emuna oisik b'dinei mamanis hanu pshat eraisa is involved in this inyan of learning pshat eraisa. Zeu b'chinas hakravas hakarban tamid v'aktaras hakteres. This is the aspect of the tikkun that's created when a person is learning or saying, but really learning the carbon tamid and the haktaras hakataris. This is the side of what this is, the carbon tamid and haktaras hakataris. How so? Because the R Yaakov tells us, and again, all this is extremely deep. We don't have time to go into every prat, but just to read and translate, just to get the data. Says the Rebbe Kehal Yedidim tamid, through the carbon tamid, the Arizal tells us, Oilim Chachma Bina Das Da Asiyah Yetzirah. All of the Olamais have an aliyah, and everything moves up a level. Right? So, for example, going all the way down to Malchus, and we learned something similar actually to this in Torah Chav Dalid, I believe. Malchus moves up to be Malbish Netzach Od Yisoid. Netzach Od Yisoid move up to be Malbish Chesed Gvur Tiferes. Chesed Gvur Tiferes move up to be Malbish Chachma Bina Das. And here's what we're learning now. Chachma Bina Das of the world of Asiyah move up to be Malbish, Malchus of Yetzirah. Okay? That's Chachma Bina Das da Asiyah, rise up into the next world up, which is Yetzirah. V'chal hanitzaitzes hakadoshim shebeklipa oilim b'soid achar aser samamani k'tayros b'bechinas Malchus. The Arizal tells us that there are 11 nitzaitzes to Kedusha that sink down to Mechaya, the lower worlds, and they need to be redeemed, right? Those are the nitzaitzes to Kedusha and everything. They need to be redeemed. They currently are in the tachdis of Malchus. Malchus of Asiyah has the Yud Aleph nitzaitzes. When the Olamais have their aliyah and all of the spiritual levels move one up, so then the nitzaitzes are dragged out from the lowest place and they rise up to be Malbish, the world of Malchus. So that's what's being referred to here. Beside Achad Aser Samoni HaKatayres, and that's what the Katayres refers to, Bechinas Malchus. Adam Isaac B'Masu Matan, V'Masu Matan Bechinas Dinei Mamanes, and Pshati Araisa, when a person is involved in that world of transaction, of Masu Matan, of differentiation, of opposition, in a sense. Hainu pshate araisa. So then ninsa b'shasa siyas hamaso matan oisik b'pshate araisa. Then literally you're involved in pshate araisa shemichinas matata mekanen b'Yetzirah, which is an aspect of the malach matat. The malach matat we learned in previous Torahs is associated with the 6 days of the week. Right? We learned that matat is connected the world of Mishnah, right? And that's connected the Shishay Siddur Mishnah, connected the 6 days of the week. And that's the aspect of Yetzirah. And thereby, a person is involved in Shishay Siddur Mishnah, is the Dinei Mamanis. And that's the tikkun of the Ketairis. A person's moving into that realm and involved in the world of Asiyah, but they're connecting it to a world of guidance, to a world of insight, to a world of laws, right, and guidelines. The Chachma Bina Das that is powering this person's Asiyah, which is Maso Matan, rises up into Yetzirah and Pshat Deraisa. And so while he's engaged, right, literally in transaction in the Olam Asiyah, but because it's being guided by principles from Mishnah, right, which is Shas, right, Shisha the Mishnah, it's being guided by, which the Talmud is just an extrapolation, right? So then what's happening is, that's the tikkun of Ketores, right? Your Chachma Bina Das of Asiyah, Maso Matan, is rising up, right, and kissing that place of Yetzirah, which is the guidance from the Shishe Sidrei Mishnah, and thereby v'chol nitzotzes hakadusha sheis b'seicha akam haratzah shebesvius Yerushalayim. And when that happens, all of the potential negative forces, which are the nitzotzes to kedusha that are trapped within the klipas that surround Yerushalayim, like we learned, which is a symbol for Emunah and Malchus, meaning all of the potential for us to be dragged down away from Yerushalayim, which is that world of Emunah, into ego and into self-gratification and into allowing my own gain, my own personal value, contradict, right, the ultimate values that I'm really supposed to be channeling in the world far beyond my personal gain or loss. So then all of those nitzotzes are elevated. Oilim lebechinas emunah. Everything becomes consolidated into emunah. Hanikri Yerushalayim u'Malchus, and Kishazek comes then Neufel. That's also a lashon that we learned in Torah Aleph, a lashon that's a reference to Milayim 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 Yemats, like it says by Yaakov and Esav, and Rashi tells us Kishazek comes then Neufel. There's a constant battle between these two forces and energies, and when one is up, the other is down, and that's exactly what's happening here. When a person is Oisik and Maso Matan with the protection of Bina, right, and Al Pi Dine Mamanis, right, in that way, so then Kishazek comes then Neufel. Right, then your Yaakov Avinu consciousness is elevated, and Mamela, all the klipas fall away, the nitzotzes are elevated, right, and consolidated, and thereby we're able to operate in this world in a safe and protected way, where not only is it safe and protected because a person's doing something b'di'eva that needs to be safe and protected, like we learned yesterday, it's an absolute l'chatchila, it's a necessity. So therefore, a person is doing what's absolutely necessary in the appropriate way, where they're engaged in the world of Malchus, they're connected through Bina, Liba, Doiver, Emes, B'Lavavai, values of Emes to a higher world, and they're supported by the world of Yetzirah from the standpoint of the Dine Mamanis that they're working and operating with. Right, and thereby everything is rectified. They're able to stay anchored in a world of Achdus even while they operate in a world of Pirud, and then they're able to get the Sheina that they desperately need. Because the destruction of Emunah is called the destruction of Yerushalayim. Like Chazal say, Anshe Amana, because Yerushalayim, Malchus, in its destroyed form means that Emunah is destroyed, right? Meaning that a person is no longer anchored to higher values. A person gets completely lost in Olam Hazeh. Dinei Mamon has stopped mattering when a person doesn't care about truth, because then all of a sudden a person is just in it for their own personal gain, and come what may, they're willing to steal and cheat and lie and backstab and step on and insult and etc. to get their way. And if a person is in that sense, it is in that state of a lack of Emunah, guess what? Yerushalayim, which is Malchus, is Charva. Then it cites us that we're supposed to be consolidated. That's why we're here in this world, to be able to unify all aspects and flecks and sparks of truth and holiness. Everything just explodes, and all the pieces break apart. And there's no energy of chesed bringing everything together. It's just gevura energy, the concealment of a Kadosh Baruch Hu's presence, unifying presence. And Yerushalayim is destroyed. Charva Yerushalayim, achapaskim imenu anshe amana. So ukush Yerushalayim, haino ha'emuna, haino maso matan, shubshat yeraisa miskaberes. When Yerushalayim in the proper state, which is Malchus protected by Bina and supported by the world of Yetzirah, which is maso matan in a holy way, shubshat yeraisa miskaberes, and that's strong as I elu ha'akum ha'aratzas neiflim. Right, so that whole consciousness of akum, which is all a consciousness of Esav, which is a consciousness of disparity, because instead of serving the ikar v'shar shedikula alman, they serve all the planets, right, which is multiplicity and polytheism. Va'aratzas, and all other lands, artzius neiflim. Va'oili mimena, and from them come kol hanitzaitzes hakadoshim shebesoicham beside achad asar samamani hakataras, and then everything is elevated, and then the world is the way that the world is supposed to be. This is what Chazal tell us. There are 3 mitzvos that were commanded to Klal Yisrael b'knisasam la'aretz in our entry to Eretz Yisrael. Number 1, ha'amadas ha'melech, which is instituting and establishing a melech, right? But a proper melech, right, in accordance with the halachas of the Torah. Ukrisa zari shel Amalek, and the wiping away of the zari, the remnants of the progeny of the descendants of Amalek. Ubinyan base hamikdash, and building the base hamikdash. Says the Rebbe V'habha Talia. All of these are toila on each other. Ki hamadas hamelech b'chinas emuna k'niskele el hamadas hamelech. That's Malchus, right? So that's obviously b'chinas emuna, right? Hamadas melech means you got to institute and establish Malchus. Ukris azar shal Amalek. What's that? Himanitzoyt sha'olim mibena akam ha'ratzos b'chinas achar asur samamani hakateres. That means cutting away the nitzoytzis to kedusha, the holy sparks, from the possible klipa, which is mastir, which could have dragged us into a low place. Kamasha move a medrash, like it's brought in the medrash. Lama nismacha parshas krisis zar shal Amalek leparshas mishkailas. Why in the Torah is the imperative to wipe out the seed of Amalek connected to the parshas mishkailas, which is all about being honest in business? Loimar, to tell you sheba avoy mishkailas hayam alchemes Amalek. When there's avoy mishkailas, then Amalek is attacking. What's Amalek? Is the klipa. Amalek is the force that's mastir. Amalek is asher karcha baderech. Amalek, right, etc., etc. That's what Amalek is. The abrogation of bris in every aspect. Right? They cut off the milas and zark and klape mala. Right? That's what Amalek represents. Amalek is Esav. Amalek is the descendants of Esav. Right? Amalek is that Messiah, right, of Esav. So the Amalek comes and attacks. Why? Because these two things are connected. Amalek is the klipa that wants to be master. In other words, it wants to drag us into the realm of differentiation. It wants to drag us into the realm of the hastara of a Kadosh Baruch Hu's presence, which means there's a self-focus as opposed to an other focus, a subjective anchoring as opposed to an objective anchoring in values. When Mishkoiles is under attack, then Amalek is attacking. Right? So these two things are connected. So first we have to build up Malchus, that's Hamadas HaMelech. Then we have to get rid of Amalek, which means Mishkoiles, right? Emes, we have to have Emes, that's Binah. And then ultimately, Ubinin Beis HaMikdash Shebechinas R HaPanim. Then we're able to access the R HaPanim, the light of Kesser, Shebechinas Chiddush HaMoichin, and then we get the Chiddush HaMoichin that we're yearning for. Then that hidden light, what we call Gesundheit, the background update, so to speak, right? The update of sort of that light that it's not something that you encounter face to face. It's what we call in Torah Dalit, bumping up against the barrier, because you can never get it, but that's how you get it. It's a different kind of energy. It's not linear. It's not something you read in a book. It's a hashra'ah, right? It's something that just settles down with time, and all of a sudden a person becomes illuminated by this mysterious light of Kesser. That's what we're at, right? We're trying to get at that which is really intangible. It's a holistic sense of well-being that's really impossible to put your finger on and go to a store and pick it off a shelf and buy it. Like, it doesn't happen that way. It happens through a fully integrated life where Memela, there's a total that's larger than the sum of all of the parts, right? And that's what Kesser is. It is the total that's larger and greater than the sum of the parts. But it can only be accessed when you bring all the parts together, which is Chacham and Bina and all the different manifestations. In this context, work and sleep, right? That's what we're talking about. Learning and working, in all the aspects. Shabbos are the 6 days of the week, Eretz Yisrael and Chutz La'aretz, etc. And then a person is able to access the Ohr HaPanim, which is the Ohr of Kesser, and that's the aspect of the Binyan Beis HaMikdash. Shebechinas Chiddush HaMoichin Chiddush HaNeshama, K'moisha Amar Chachamim is Chana L'Bracha, Mi Sheyesh B'Deya, Ki Ilu Nivna Beis HaMikdash, B'Yama V'Kaniska Le'el. And that's the aspect of the Beis HaMikdash. Memela says, Rebbe Nachman, you have all these three elements, right, is what we're supposed to do when we enter into Eretz Yisrael. Hamadas Melech is establishing Malchus properly. That means Oisik Amaso Matan Be'emuna, Al Pi Dinim Amanis. Then Lahachar Zara Shalom Amalek is the opposite, is the contrast to Avoid Mishkoiles, means bringing emes into my heart like Reb Safra. That's the inyan of a diver, emes bolvavai, that's shmiya, right, which is chashmal leiv, and that's the energy of bina that's going to protect with the ultimate categorization of unity that is beyond, right, all the multiplicity, and then ultimately that's going to lead to binyan Beis HaMikdash, which is the illumination of das, which is the externalization, so to speak, of the revelation of the light of Kesser. And that's the R HaPanim, and that's what we're trying to get at when we go ahead and enter into the realm of sleep as opposed to being involved only in the realm of work. Spiritual work. Okay, ois tes v'zeh chashmal, says the Rebbe. This chashmal hanasa b'bchinas v'doiver emes b'levavai, which is a result of the aspect of a doiver emes b'levavai, like we learned, where a person is connected to emes. So malbish lahamuna, and it comes ahead and protects the amuna. Hu b'chinas refuah. It's an aspect of the refuah of a strap. How so? Says the Rebbe, ki refuahs he makifei Malchus. It is the refuahs that are coming down to be makif Malchus. Hainu emuna, which is emuna. Malchus that's being protected by chashmal is being protected by straps, much like the tefillin straps hang down, right, from that head, right, from that place, and they are supposed to come all the way down the body. That's the energy of the refuah. It's like a channeling of the light of Binah coming down into the world of Malchus, right, which is, if you think of it, a really, really deep side. Because the tefillin strap, there are no, because there are two refuahs. There are not two refuahs. There's only one refuah. It's just a really long refuah that runs through the tefillin. Then we make a circle out of it. Then we make a knot, and then duality emerges. The secret of the refuah is the secret of how multiplicity emerges from unity, if you think of it. And then the tefillin shel rosh is the light of Kesser, like we learned, which is literally tat fast, the doubled over duality, going back to Torah Lamed Gimel, all wrapped up in toy tafais, right? Tat kaspi shtayim, tat pas friki shtayim, right? They both mean toy tafais is a doubled over doubling, which is chayshech, what's called in the Svarim chayshech kaful umechubal. Not getting to that. Then you bring it together, and that's the inyan of the tefillin shel rosh. But the refuah is the light of Binah. Because that's what Binah is. Binah is the light of unity, which ends up fragmenting kiviyachol, or producing multiple energies. Chachma is not like that. Chachma is just the light of unity. You cannot have the refuah, right, of a circle that then moves from Chachma, because Chachma will never do that, right? Or if you want, you can say that the circular part is Chachma, and then from the knot downward, that's the emergence of Binah. I'm saying something extremely deep. Do you understand what I'm saying? Right? When you look at the knot, it's a phenomenal thing. How does duality come from unity? Everyone wants to know that. And the answer is a knot. Which again, it's like, because I'm talking on a physical level, meaning this philosophical conundrum, how does duality come from unity? Well, each of us walk around with that philosophical conundrum on our head every morning, right? Because if you look at someone's head when they're wearing tefillin, that's exactly what's happening. The shoes is very deep. We're gonna get to shoes in a minute. Did you know that, or you just said that? Pile Plime, because we're literally about to get to shoes. That's wild. Shoelaces, no less. We're about to say that. Unbelievable. Okay, hold on 1 second, right? No lace. So, no time for jokes this morning. Right. So, you go from the refuah of the head strap, right, which is achdus, unity, and then you have this inyan of a knot, which is an ar atzum from Shemayim, that from within the unity sort of manipulating itself on itself produces two straps, right? Mm-hmm. The two straps come down all the way down the body into the realm of Malchus, which is the ultimate realm of differentiation and duality. But ultimately, it's the light of Binah. It's the light of Chashmal from Kesser, right? From Chachma, and then ultimately the Tachshit, which is the Kesser. And that is what's protecting Malchus, because ultimately you're able to see how it all draws from unity. This is what Rav said to Rav Shmuel Bar Shilas, when you strike the little children, right? Which is, Rebbe Nachman's going to learn this, of course, Al Derech Remez, because Rebbe Nachman himself, we have a letter from. It's probably the earliest expression of this notion, which today is hopefully very commonplace, unfortunately not completely universal yet, sadly. But Rebbe Nachman has a letter where he wrote, you must not hit children, ever. Like, there's a handwritten letter from the Rebbe that was discovered quite recently, where the Rebbe writes this, and he says, you are not allowed to hit children, right? So, and again, maybe it used to be this way, there's a pasuk about it in Mishlei, but that's not the point. The point that this was Rabbi Nachman's feeling. So over here he doesn't mean this literally, but the Gemara says, if you have to hit a kid, so you hit him with a shoelace. Hit him with a shoelace. Because it's very gentle and it's not going to hurt all that much. Says the Rebbe, okay, but it doesn't even mean that. Because I'll be side. Timche lashon tahara. Timche means to hit in this context, but it could also mean to purify. Hashem says, I've wiped away your sin with mechisi, right? I've wiped it away. So timche could mean machisi, to to clarify, to cleanse. Yenuka b'chinas ma'ar ha'katan. Yenuka is the aspect of the moon, right? Yenuka is a little child, and that's the aspect of the moon. And b'chinas sheina. Loi simche, if you're coming to cleanse the moon, which is that what it means, when you're coming to be simche, the Yenuka, ella ba'arkas of the mesane. Arkas of the mesane, shoelaces, hainu refuah shel tefillin. That's the same thing as the refuah of tefillin. How do we know that? Because the Gemara in Saita says, now, when Abraham said, I won't take anything from you because I don't want them to say, from him, right, that's the inyan of michut. Is refuah shel tefillin. So it's a shoelace, right? And that's what we mean when you come to be timche es hayenuka, which means to cleanse Malchus. The only way to cleanse it is ba'arkas of the mesani, is the inyan of the shoelace, which is a reflection of the light of tefillin, which is the refuah of bina. Like we learned, that's the light of chashmal, drawing down that light of the way in which duality emerges from duality emerges, multiplicity emerges from unity, which is symbolized and emblematized in the way that the refuah of the tefillin is one strap that ultimately ends up coming down into two. And like Andrew was saying, the same thing with the shoelace. It's just one long lace, right? It's not two different laces. The way that you lace it in such a way where it's two. And those things are explicitly connected in this Torah over here. Hainu, and when you want to protect the masumata be'emuna, that it shouldn't be accosted by the possibilities of dragging a person further down into fragmentation where they forget their values. We're not able to protect the small one, going back to Shimon Ben Nanas, just with shoelaces, which is a reference to the refuah of tefillin. Shel tefillin. Hainu, in other words, shetamshe chashmal mi bina liba, is to draw down chashmal from bina liba, lahalbish es emuna, to be able to engarb and enclothe emuna. Hanu mechinas, going back to that reference, yeshamesh as Shimon Ben Nanas, right? Which is the same thing, to draw Shimon, which is shmiya, which is the inyan of shmiya talya beliba, v'nesata la'amcha leiv shemea, etc., and to draw that down into the inyan of asiyas masumat and kirev safra, to have the diver emes bolvavai. Mamish, to have that have a diver emes. That's a person's main thing. We all have to check in with ourselves, right? What are we willing to sacrifice for? Like mamish, everybody should think in their minds. If someone would come to give me $1 million and tell me what would I not accept it for? And I think that the more the say higher level, I don't know what it is, higher level, deeper, it gets less and less dramatic. Like, meaning ultimately a tzaddik is not willing to make any inauthentic movement if you pay him $1 million. Like, forget about like some major, he's not willing to daven for 1 minute less than he felt like he needed to daven for $1 million. That's the ultimate light of a diver emes bolvavai, where at the end of the day, money cannot shake you at all. Because again, the commitment to the objective value for which I was sent down into this world is so strong that outweighs all the financial gain 100% of the time. Okay, and that's something that every person needs to be thinking about, right? It's not just theoretical. Like, this is real. V'diver emes bolvavai, right? How much emes do we have in us, right? Are we willing to be swayed? Are we willing to look a donor in the face, like, say in my humble case, and be willing to say, I don't need your money, I don't want your money. If you'd like to partner with me, this is the way that we're going to do it. Otherwise, I can't be something else for you because I don't need it. I'll get the money somewhere else. Like, a person has to be in that matziv, right? Otherwise, it's not authentic. And then, the people who actually need to be doing things are not really the ones doing them. It's someone else. Okay, so this, and that's just in sort of my misgarret, where I deal with donors, right? But in a person who's in business, again, values. This is something that's really important. I just want to make one tiny comment because I hear things all the time from different people. There's a lot of money in the frum world. A lot of money is going to yeshivas, a lot of money, but we're not really clear where all the money's coming from. And some people don't ask, and some people don't know. The Baal Shem Tov would only receive money from tzaddikim. Because if not, then all the Torah that's being learned is being funded by dirty money. that's going to impact the learning. Meaning, it's a direct tamche araisa. It's netzach anoid. It supports you. It's not so. Give me money, any money. No way. If people are cheating, if people are schooling systems, if people are, that's not kosher money, and that's going to impact. I know it's a very like dramatic thing to say, and I'm not blaming it because nobody really knows. But you could kind of get a picture, you know what I'm saying? And then there are stories that come out, terrible things. It's horrible. So really, this matters. Like, we'd rather be MS. We have to be MS. That's more important. MS. V'daiver MS b'levavai. And that's work that all of us need to do on our, sort of our own level, each person in their own world. Kegoin Rav Safra, to keep that model of Rav Safra in mind. The refuah gematria Shah says the Rebbe refuah is the gematria Shah. Shin Ayin is called the Shah Nahirin, which, well, actually we spoke about Chashmal, right? Maybe that's the depth of why we say Shah when we want somebody to be quiet, right? Because we're connecting to the world of we're connecting to the world of the Shah Nahirin, perhaps. But that's the aspect of the 370 lights that are associated with Kesser. Lerma is it's hinting to Binah-Chashmal hazeh shebechinas diver emes bolvavai nishar ha'amuna v'aneshama hainu ha'moichin shebesoicha mekabalas R HaPanim shu shana hayrin shal panim el yodim. It's daika through the Chashmal, right, which is the refuah, which is gematria Shah, that we're able to access the light of Kesser, the shana hayrin shal panim el yodim. Again, there's a lot of deep gematrias here. I'm not going through them now, because just for the purpose of time. Like the Arizal says, comes out from the word ve'emes, which is one of the Yud Gimel Midas of Rachman that we know emerged from Kesser Eliyad, and that's the Shat Nohairin. And again, it's connected with Gematria, but no time. And that's what the Gemara says, the Kari to the one who is learning Kari. The child is learning, but when a child is not learning, don't throw him out of the shir. Just make sure that he has good friends. Put him together with kids who are strong, who are going to help him and carry him along. And then even a weak learner is in a chevra of people, so he's carried along by them and he's impacted positively. Says the Rebbe Kedavar Kasha. How does this work? The one who's a bar aryan, a person is about Torah. So then this works out, right? Be that was the suggestion, right? Be a person who's involved in that. That makes sense. Right? That was the suggestion of Rab, right? Lerev Shmuel ben Shilas, right, which was Katam Chiliyunukalei Simcha L'arkas of the Masani, because it was giving him advice as to how to be a school teacher, right? So that's number one, and that's what he told him. If you want to protect and cleanse Malchus, you need to draw down the light from the arkas of the Masani, which is the shoelaces, which is the refuah, which is the tefillin, which is the Binah-Chashmal. But that works for a person who's Oisik Amasumatan. But a person is not involved in that. So how's that going to work? How's that going to help clarify him if he's not consciously thinking of the whole Chayshim Mishpat as he's involved in doing business transactions? He's not on that level. Okay, I'll ask a Rav from time to time, but you understand, but he's not like actively learning Pshat the Eraisa when he's doing business. It's okay, because he's still helping the one who's connected to his shirish to have a little bit of a rest. He's involved in Masu Matan just in a simple way, and the person who's connected to him is getting a chiddush. V'zeu di kari mishu bar aryan as a toiv aloi shes chadish sichloi b'seich hamuna. That will work for him to be oisik masu matam v'yela moichin chadash and lomad l'dveikas habari. Then I'll have a renewed sense of clarity to then return to dveikas habari. Uchidoloi kari mahavit savta l'chaverai. If he's not able to do it on his own, at least he'll be b'tzavsed b'chaverai. His masu matam be'emuna will actually end up impacting the tzaddik in a holy way, because in some sense he's refreshing the chelik of the tzaddik that he has within him. And the Rebbe says, Rosh HaShana, because this Torah was said on Rosh HaShana in Zlatei Pola, I believe. And so the Rebbe says this is the aspect that Tekiyas. Oh my gosh, I could speak just an hour on those 5 words. Rosh Hashanah is the aspect of sleep. Not going to get into the whole thing now, but basically, it's the dormita that HaKadosh Baruch Hu put on Adam Arishan to carve out Chava from him. And then it happens on Rosh Hashanah, because Rosh Hashanah is Hayom Haras Olam. It is the birthday not just of the world, but it's because it wasn't. It's the birthday of Adam Arishan. Adam Arishan was born right on Rosh Hashanah. And so over here you have Chava is split off from Adam, which is the creation of Malchus Malchus, a world of differentiation out of a world of unity, which is how the refuah is split off through the Kesser, right, and become dual from that unified light, which was Adam and Chava when they were one, and that's the sleep that HaKadosh Baruch Hu puts Adam in. That's the aspect of Shenik Yedua. Shu b'chinas masu matam be'emuna. That's the aspect of masu matam be'emuna. B'chinas pshatei reis, b'chinas oisi b'dinei mamanis. U'tkiyas u'misayris hashena. The Rambam tells us, Tkiyas shofar is waking up from the sleep. A person hears the tekiyas, you wake up, right? That's what it is. So Rosh HaShana B'chlal is the Indian of sleep because it's the creation of Chava. That's the world of Malchus. That's the world of Mila. That's the world of Rachel. That's the world of differentiation, Nasu Matan, oppositional forces. And then Tkiyas shofar is what we get from that. Tkiyas shofar is the R HaPanim Amizeh, who is Admus Pnei Atokea. This is the reddening of the face of the one blowing the shofar, because this means, this is the lights from Kesser that are coming down into his face and reddening his face and illuminating his face. So with this we finish with Perish, and this is Pshat in the Pasuk. Ashreya am yoidei surah, says the Rebbe Shimon. This is the element of the elevation of the 11 Samamani HaKatairos, which are the Nitzotzus to Kedusha, like we learned, which are around Yerushalayim, meaning the possibility of a person who's involved in Isaac Masamatan to be dragged down into differentiation. We're able to unify them. We're able to protect them. Yoidei Surua. Yoidei Lashon Eschabras. Das can mean to know, but it can mean to connect. Vayeda Adam Eschava Ishtai means they were intimate, means they came together. Trua can mean a shofar blast, but it can mean shvira, can mean to break. Because those sparks came from the breaking. They're in the aspect of splintering, of explosion. They're the aspect of fragmentation. Why does trua mean that? Because the pasuk says Troi in b'shevet barzel. Where do we learn this? Not going to quiz you now. In Torah Yud. In Torah Yud we learn Troi in b'shevet barzel. That's what trua is, to shatter. So Yoidei Surah doesn't just mean he knows the Trua, the shofar blast. He is Yoidei, he brings together the Trua, the brokenness, and then you know what happens? Hashem ba'ar panecha yahalecha. Then you're able to access the Ohr HaPanim. B'chinas masa matan k'may shekasav smach zvulun b'tzeisecha. That's yahalechun. Hainu kisha oisik b'masa matan be'emuna k'dei lahadias l'shmasa b'chinas chadashim l'abakar m'rabba manasecha. When a person's involved in that in order to bring the light of renewal and faith and Malchus into their life, k'dei lakabel me Ohr HaPanim Chidush HaMoichin. Then Hashem ba'ar panecha ya'alechon. Our ya'alechon smach zvulun b'tzeisecha, which is the b'china masamata, is ba'ar panecha chidush hanashama al yidei za'oilin kol hanitzotzos al yidei achad asas amoni hakatayros. Pilei playim chavra. Pilei playim. There's nothing like this on planet Earth. I want you to realize that there's nothing like this. It doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. There's no Torah like this. Ashreinu. Every Yid should have access to this. Every Yid should have access to this. Please Hashem, let every single Yid have access to this. Chaim Yehoshua.
That's a for you for Reb Safra.
Reb Safra?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
I don't know.
Okay, well, how's everyone else going to know? L'chaim, thank you so much, Yid, and have a wonderful, wonderful day. And Be'ez Hashem, I will take you all with me to Eretz Yisrael today. Be'ez Hashem, looking forward and having everybody in mind, and we will continue in around 2 weeks. Be'ez Hashem, hold tight. It's a great time for Chazara.
האב שלי מלך חי וקיים על כל נשימה שאני